Hi everybody, I'm back with another video. So if you haven't seen any of my previous videos, then I'll let you know that I am an HR consultant. I've been in human resources for almost the last 2 decades. And this is my way of supporting the community in terms of trying to make heads or tails out of the different legislation that's coming out with regards to unemployment, benefits, obligations, and best practices for trying to cope with financial responsibilities, employment responsibilities, and different ways of working for this time of the pandemic crisis. So today I'm going to be talking about the FFCRA, and for those of you who have been keeping up with the alphabet soup coming out of Washington, D.C., this stands for the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. It was signed into law way back in March 18th, on March 18th. However, the Department of Labor came out with further guidance around the different conditions under which an employee can qualify for paid sick time under this law. So I thought it was important to record this video and provide you with the information that's really needed as an employer, so you know when an employee qualifies for these types of conditions, and for an employee, how you know that you would be able to fit under one of these reasons. Now, under the FFCRA, there are actually 6 reasons under which an employee can be paid sick time benefits. However, this video will only cover the first 5 of them because, quite frankly, nobody really understands number 6. I have touched base with a number of different employment attorneys, and no one seems to really know exactly what that means. And quite frankly, I don't even know if the Department of Labor knows what it means. So I'm going to show a slide for the various reasons that somebody would qualify under the FFCRA. If you go to the Department of Labor website, you will basically see these are the reasons how an employee would qualify under the FFCRA. Now you notice that I keep on talking about employee, employee, employee. Yes, an individual must be an employee. They still must have a job, be on the payroll of an organization in order to qualify for paid sick leave under the FFCRA. So let's take a look at the reasons. The first reason is an employee needs to be subject to a quarantine or an isolation order. And what that means is on an individual basis. It's not a community-wide basis with a little bit of a twist. I'll get to that. Number 2 is if the individual employee was advised by a healthcare provider to self-quarantine. Number 3 is if the employee is seeking medical diagnosis, then obviously the time lost for work that's available, they would be covered by the FFCRA. And number 4 is caring for another. We're not really going to talk about that in this video. And finally, number 5 is caring for a child due to school closure or lack of childcare. So number 6, as you can see, I'm not going to read it to you, super long, and basically nobody really knows what it means. So let's get into the reasons why somebody would be able to qualify under the FFCRA. And I'll talk about some real details that came out of the Department of Labor. All right, so let's go with the first reason. The first reason is that an employee, an individual, is under quarantine order, or and then number 2 is the employee is under doctor's self-quarantine advice. Now, I'm going to talk about these 2 in tandem because they're very closely related. So the first one and the second one has to deal with an employee who has been individually told to stay home. So it can be the federal government, the state government, the county government, the city government, you get the idea. It has to be an individual that's told to stay home for example, they're in a vulnerable health group. So if somebody has asthma, they've been told to stay home because anybody with asthma should stay home. That may be a reason why. Another reason is that if you're in a certain age group where you are told to stay home, then that would be a qualifying reason. So over the age of 65, for example, nobody should be coming to work. Even if you were deemed an essential worker, you shouldn't be coming into work. Now, it also is if your doctor has told you not to come into work because you have a compromised health situation or because you're in that vulnerable age group. So it's either a government order or your doctor has told you not to. Now, here's the big thing not to forget about is there has to be available work that you're unable to do. So if, for example, you are told to go home, telework, work from home, work in your pajamas with your fuzzy slippers and your pajamas, and you're able to do that, then you don't qualify under the paid sick for FFCRA because you're still able to work. This is only if you're not able to work. So let's take another example. Let's say you're a machinist and you're in a vulnerable age group, you're told to go home, you cannot work, you cannot telecommute as a machinist, and therefore you really lose out on that time when you would be able to work and therefore be paid. That is probably a very good reason why you would be able to collect under the FFCRA. Now let's take another example. Let's say that you are feeling well, but because of COVID-19, you know, your restaurant, let's say you're working in a restaurant as a server and your hours have been cut. So that does not fall under reasons 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, or 6, quite frankly, because there is no work available and you're not sick and you are not told to stay home because you have a compromised health situation or because you're in a vulnerable group. It's simply because business has slowed down at your workplace and you're not able to work. So let's go on to number 3. And number 3 is if you are symptomatic or seeking diagnosis, or symptomatic and seeking diagnosis. So this would be, for example, when the employee needs to call and make an appointment to get tested, and then they go get tested, and then there's that waiting period for when they get their test results back. Ideally, the employee shouldn't be going back into work waiting for their test results. They should really stay at home so that they can wait for their results safely and not potentially contaminate anybody else. Now, once again, it has to mean that the employee is not doing any work. So if the employee goes home and is waiting for the test results, but they're able to telework, then that time doesn't qualify. They may qualify that time for making the appointment and then to attend the appointment, to get tested, etc. But if they're just staying at home waiting for the results and they're on Zoom conference calls, they're able to, you know, do some training at home, that type of thing, then they are working, and that time does not qualify for paid sick time under the FFCRA. Now, reason number 5 is a big clarification as well. So this is when you're caring for your son or daughter because their school is closed and there's no other child care available. So a couple of things to think about is that the child care provider that you used to have doesn't need to be compensated or paid. That used to be the case when the law came out, but as the Department of Labor had really thought this through, they said, you know, that person doesn't need to be paid. So, for example, if grandma used to take care of your son or your daughter while you went off to work, and now grandma has to self-quarantine because she's in a certain age group, then you don't have that child care provider anymore. You didn't have to, you weren't paying her before, but because you don't have that child care provider and now you must take care of your child within your own home, then that would be a qualifying reason. Now, a big thing to think about as well is that if there is somebody else in the household that can take care of your child, then you don't qualify for FFCRA paid sick, reason number 5. So as an employer, let's kind of do the switch here. As an employer, it's a good practice to ask your employee who's claiming number 5 to ask if there is another person who is able to take care of the child within the household. And if there is, then really that's not a qualifying reason. Now, as an employer and as an employee, both sides, you really need to document the conversations that you have, maybe the type of information that you email or scan or fax to employer versus employee. And the reason being is from the employer side, the back end of the FFCRA is the money that's paid out for paid sick can be claimed as a tax credit on payroll taxes later on in the year. So for example, if you were super generous with providing paid sick under the FFCRA for reasons that really don't qualify under the FFCRA, then that money basically comes out of your pocket. You will not be able to be reimbursed for situations that the employee really didn't qualify for. So it's important to document. On the employee side, it's very important to document as well. This is all very new to everybody, so it's just better to document everything. All right, so that is my talk for today. I hope this has been helpful. If you have any topics that you would like me to look into and to provide more information about, then feel free to drop it in the comments below. Thank you so much, everybody, for the positive comments that I have received so far. I'm glad it's been helpful to people. So until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you guys real soon.